Welcome to this episode of Unraveling Adoption, an intentional space to delve into adoption's complexities together. I'm Beth Syverson. I'm an adoptive mom of a vibrant and insightful 20-year-old son, Joey. I'm walking beside him while working on my own personal growth and healing. Joey and I are committed to helping anyone impacted by adoption, and we want to help the general public understand adoption's complexities better too. I'm also a certified coach helping seekers who want to move forward in their lives. So as a mom of an Asian American adopted son, my son is from Japan, I am always eager to hear and get to know other Asian adoptees, and especially guys. So today's guest is Nathan Nowack, a Korean adoptee, a professional photographer, a Lego aficionado, a leader in KAN, the Korean American Adoptee Adoptive Family Network. And he's a dad with 3 little kids and a husband and a co-host of a podcast called The Janchi Show. His collaborators on that show are also Korean adoptee young men, Patrick Armstrong and KJ Rolke. I enjoy their banter and their explorations of their own identity very much. So let's talk with Nathan about how he understands his own identity, what challenges he's encountered along the way, and what tools and resources he's found to be helpful. So welcome to Unraveling Adoption, Nathan.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I'm so glad you're here to share your story. I am all ears. I want to know everything about Asian American identity. I know you have all the answers for every Asian American.
I wish.
Well, why don't you just start with your story, your adoption story, your origin story?
Thank you. Yeah, I was adopted from Korea when I was 5.5 months old. I was raised by white parents in Oklahoma and the mostly white neighborhoods. I had my adoptive sister. She was also a non-biological adoptive sister. She was adopted about 1.5 years before me, and she's 3 years older than me. Okay. But other than that, not much Asian representation in my hometown, small town of about 30,000 people.
Ooh, that's small. Okay. So you're like the 2 Asian kids in the whole town. Oh boy. Okay. And were your parents loving? How did your childhood go?
Yeah, I feel like it was a very standard Midwestern childhood. I mean, I grew up loving steak and potatoes and going on family vacations and just doing everything that a normal boy would do, played soccer, sports and things, but very little culture as far as Asian culture. I didn't really dive into anything Korean related. I didn't even have sushi until I was in college.
Whoa.
So there was a few Chinese restaurants, but that was about it.
Okay. And you knew you were from Korea, though. I mean, it's hard to hide. Transracially adopted kids usually know they're adopted, and you knew it was from Korea. Mm-hmm. What was the narrative about Korea that you grew up with?
A lot of what I learned was actually from the Encyclopedia Britannica.
I remember those.
So that was a lot of what I read. And so a lot of that had things about the Korean War. Little did I know that a lot of that was the reason for Korean adoptions and how that all started. But at the time, that was my knowledge of Korea, was that there was a war and that there was a North and a South. Okay. That was all I knew. I didn't know anything else. And most of the stuff that I learned was probably more about Japan or about China.
Okay. And it sounds like your adoptive parents were loving and great parents. If you were to give them a grade about the transracial piece, I give myself an F. So I'm not throwing all adoptive parents under the bus, but I give myself like a D. But you don't have to grade your parents. But what did they do well? What did they not do well about the transracial piece of it?
Yeah, I mean, as far as raising me, they were, I think, wonderful. Yeah. I hold a lot of my parenting skills from what I learned from them. But as far as the transracial part, I don't think they had a roadmap. They didn't have any information to, I guess, include in my upbringing other than what the adoption agency said. And as far as I know, they were very minimal about any material, which is interesting because I was adopted from the Dillon agency, which is in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I know they have camps. Yeah. But as far as I know, I was never asked if I wanted to go to one of those camps. And I don't think my parents even really knew about it. So maybe they got a newsletter, maybe they got a few pieces of mail, but I never knew about that. And who knows, as a kid, I might not have wanted to go.
Yeah, you might have been like, I don't need that. You're younger than me, but I know that the ethos probably when you were growing up was like, oh, rainbow coalition, kind of like everybody is the same and we don't see color and we're trying to be unracist and stuff like that. Do you feel like you're kind of a product of that melting pot situation where everybody's all equal?
Very much so. Yeah. I think my parents, they have said to me before in the past that they never saw race. They didn't see that I was of Korean descent, even though, I saw myself that way. But even though I was raised that way, sometimes I would forget. I can remember multiple times saying to people that it's like, yeah, sometimes I forget that I'm Asian unless I see myself in a mirror.
Yeah. My son has said that. He gets shocked sometimes when he looks in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really? Can you help us understand? I really want to learn now. I know it's a little bit late for me, but maybe other people listening have littler kids or haven't adopted yet or can switch a little bit quicker than I did. Why is that a problem that your parents did not see your Asianness?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they didn't see that I was Asian, everybody else does. And so going out into the world later as a teenager off on his own in high school, as a college student and as an adult, I run into people who they first see me as Asian. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how many times I've been told, you speak very good English and things like that, where it's because they see me as Asian and then they don't understand that I was raised in Oklahoma. I mean, I'm surprised I don't have an Oklahoma accent, to be honest.
Yeah, really? That'd be more likely. Plus, you're walking around with a German name. Yep. So when maybe they see your resume and then you show up and they're like, oh, we were looking for someone else. Do you get that kind of mismatch sometimes?
Oh, many times. Mm-hmm. As a professional photographer, when I was running my business, I had clients come in and they didn't see my portfolio online. They didn't see that I was Asian. And some of them had said, oh, I'm surprised, actually. We thought you were white by your name when they came in. But sometimes that actually helped to my advantage because I did some biracial couples for weddings and stuff. And sometimes it was great because I could relate to the Caucasian side of the couple and then the Asian side of the couple.
I bet. So, yeah, I bet you get it both ways. And I believe that you married an Asian woman.
Yeah, she was my first Asian that I had dated, actually. Everyone before her was Caucasian. And so she's half Japanese, half Chinese, third and fourth generation. So, always been raised in California.
Yeah. So you both probably get questions of, oh, you speak such good English. And you're both like, we were raised here. Goodness sakes. It's terrible. Yeah. I really minimized the racism that is present all the time for Asian people. I thought, well, they're practically white. Aren't they like pretty much white? And I'm ashamed to say that now, but I say that out loud so other people that are thinking that can rethink that and come to terms with that. And I've done a lot of reading and listening and especially after COVID, I'm sure you know, that Asians have really taken a huge hit and lots of microaggressions. Mm-hmm. Is it possible for you to mention a couple of recent times where you had a microaggression against you because you're Asian?
Oh, yeah, many times. I mean, it's unfortunate, again, that it happens because you get judged by like the book of a cover. It's like, well, you're Asian. And so people will ask you questions about Asia or about Korea or ask if you speak the language or things like that. And when someone like myself doesn't have any information on that, it makes me feel not worthwhile. Like my self-esteem is knocked down a level when they ask me these questions and I don't understand them or I don't know the answers. And people don't realize that a simple little question about, oh, have you gone back to Korea? Have you tried to meet your family? Those are very personal questions that can really affect the mental health of an adoptee. So,
for sure.
Yeah. And those are things that I definitely have dealt with and been asked many times. And we also get into that emotional feeling where we're like, okay, well, we're stuck in the middle of we're not quite Asian, we're not quite American, we're just right in the middle. And that is a very common thing for a lot of us.
Yeah, my son has said that many times. I don't feel Japanese, I don't feel American, I feel like I don't belong anywhere. And that must feel just horrible for intercountry adoptees in general and interracial adoptees. That must just feel very alone and empty.
Yeah, it does. And that's why I feel so comfortable around other adoptees because in a way I know what they've been through. And granted, a lot of adoptees have gone through different situations and different experiences, but there's a lot of similarities. And it's just kind of comforting when you do find that community.
Yeah, you don't have to explain yourself or you just take a shortcut and go, oh, I get you. And you're very involved with CON. Would you like to explain a little bit about the organization and what your role is there?
Yeah, speaking of a community that I've found that's definitely been amazing. It's something I only found, I started the podcast during the pandemic, so that was 4 years ago now, but then I found CON probably 3 years ago. It was shortly after, and we did a little collaboration, and I hadn't ever heard of CON, actually. Okay. We learned about CON, actually, from one of your past guests, Glenn Morey, and he told us about it, and And I started doing research about it, and we connected with them and did some interviews. And after that year, I couldn't make it. It was virtual. So I attended the virtual conference. Mm-hmm. But then I just started helping out. I joined one of their committees, and one thing led to another. And I'm on a committee. Then I'm on the advisory committee. And then I'm now a co-planner of the conference. So it's been great to see all the people that come to it and all the good that they are doing.
That's amazing. I've heard wonderful things about it, seen the pictures. And I understand that you don't have to be Korean or an adoptee to come, but that's mostly who comes.
Yeah, as a majority are Korean adoptees, but there are, especially lately, the numbers of adoptees have increased from all over, from different countries. We had this year, we even had 2 Russian adoptees. We have had Colombian, South American, Mexican. There's adoptees from all over. And the Chinese adoptee population had, I think, this year doubled in numbers.
Wow. And when is your next conference?
The conference is always held in June, and it travels across the country. So last year it was in Chicago. And then next year it's going to be in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay. Atlanta in June of 2025.
Yeah, June 20th through 22nd.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to try to hit one of your conferences. If I can't get to Atlanta, I'll hit it the next year. But it sounds amazing. Is most of your programming around racial issues, intercountry issues, or is it just all across the board, like all types of topics?
Yeah, all types of topics. Every year there's a theme, and usually we try to get speakers and proposals that follow that theme. And so last year is representation and visibility, and next year it's growth and change.
Okay, very good. Well, that sounds really amazing. Can you talk a little bit about how connecting with particularly other Korean adoptees has helped you on your healing path? What does it give you?
So as you mentioned before, the community for me is not feeling alone and having those connections and just listening to stories that have some similarities, but also have differences, knowing that my story is not a monolith. I know I have a situation where I've had a good upbringing. I have a sister. I've even met my biological family now. So there's a lot of parts of my story that are not parts of other people's stories. So the thing I like to do is when I talk to other adoptees is it reminds me that my story is not the only one, that there are some unfortunate stories out there. There are some stories that have not so great family relations. And listening to those is, I think, very important, that you don't get stuck thinking that one story is the only story out there.
Yes, yes. There are really great adoption stories out there. And then I often see them kind of trying to defend adoption as a whole entity because theirs was so great. I'm like, oh, but there's so many other stories. And I don't know. I think even if you have a great childhood, there's still this kind of disconnect, what you were talking about, feeling like you don't belong and racially. And it's just inherent that there's going to be pain, even if you had a fabulous childhood, even if your parents were great with the transracial piece. I think no matter what, there's going to be some pain because you suffered a huge loss.
Yeah, for sure. And the loss continues. It's not something that is ever just, oh, you figure it out and it's done. Yeah, done. There's always more parts of the loss. There's more unpacking of the loss. There's unpacking of emotions. I mean, adult adoptees go their whole life finding new things out or tucking it under the rug or going to therapy or finding new information about their adoption that they didn't know prior. Yeah. So there's always an ever-changing development in our stories.
Yeah,
so.
It's no small thing, that's for sure. And you are kind of unusual for a Korean adoptee in that you are in reunion with a couple of your siblings. How did that happen? And why is it so rare?
Yeah, it's unfortunate that it's rare. But when I started the birth search, I was told that there was a 10% chance of success. Ooh. And I had to go through this whole paperwork on all these different outcomes of, to be psychologically ready for what I could find or might not find. Okay. So I went through all of that and sent in the paperwork. Unfortunately, also, I had to pay for that, which is something that is another issue with adoption agencies is making adoptees pay for finding their own records is ridiculous. But
that's terrible.
I did find out that within a month after sending in my application that they had found something. And it was actually one of my siblings who lived in the same location, and they sent a letter back. And so I remember that day like it was, yesterday, where they even told me, like, are you ready? Do you want to sit down? And all this information. And I found out that I have 6 siblings.
Oh my goodness.
So I was the 7th and youngest of the siblings.
Whoa.
And my parents had passed away already.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. This is the part where, like we were saying, you're unpacking your trauma. Finding those things out is difficult.
Yeah.
Finding that it was 3 years prior to when I did the search is also trauma, because I was just, in a way, 3 years late.
Okay. So they had already gone even before you started searching. Oh.
Yeah. So you kind of wish you had done it sooner.
Yeah, right. But you just don't know what you don't know, or you're not ready, or whatever. And out of the 6 siblings that you have now, how many of them are you in contact with?
This is another part of it, that I don't get the best communication with them because they don't speak English and I don't speak Korean. So we have to go through a translation app. And as we know, translation apps are just not very accurate. So the dialogue is very simple. It's like 3rd grade level, where, what are you doing? Here's some pictures, a lot of emojis. I'd say the most common thing we do is wish each other happy birthday and things like that, and just share photos of our recent trips. But I have met with them. My brother I've seen 4 times now, and my sisters I've seen twice. Once when I went to Korea to meet the entire family. Oh, wow. But more recently, I actually met my brother and his family in Hawaii. So we kind of made a halfway destination spot. It was a spur of the moment trip too, but it was really nice just to see him, and actually bring my 6-year-old son with me at the time. So he got to see them and play with his cousin. She's in her 20s, but they got to kind of play, and it was just kind of neat to have that moment.
Nice. And all 6 of your siblings were kept, and you were the only one adopted?
Yeah, my next oldest sister is 7 years older than me. And then my oldest sibling is about 22 years older than me.
Whoa, big gap. Were you one of those surprises and they just weren't prepared, or do you know what happened?
As far as the narrative goes with them, is that there was financial issues and they had to put me up for adoption. My youngest sister remembers saying that she was hungry a lot, and they were definitely in times of poverty. So, they gave me up.
And I bet your siblings, because of that age range, I bet many of them remember your birth and you being relinquished, and that must have really been traumatic for them.
It was traumatic for them. And that's a part of the trauma that
I never think about that.
That a lot of people don't just instantly jump to, is that they're like, oh, the trauma of the adoptee. But there's trauma for my siblings, because my oldest sibling remembers that I was given up, and she normally probably would have taken care of me at the time, but she was pregnant with her firstborn. And so her firstborn was born 10 days after me. Oh, wow. And so she couldn't take care of both kids. And so there's definitely some trauma there, because when I first met her, she was crying so much. And I only thing I can realize or understand is that she was probably crying because she's seeing me, but she felt guilty because she couldn't take care of me, and they had to give me up for adoption.
These are the complexities we're talking about adoption. There's nothing simple about any of this for anyone. It's just so complicated, and it ripples. And now you have 3 little kids. They're like half Korean and then a quarter Japanese and a quarter Chinese? Is that the ratios? And like all those countries hate each other, or they did at certain points. And like, how are they supposed to reconcile that? So what do you do for your kids to understand their racial identity, and being a child of an adoptee? And that's a lot of layers there.
It is. There's definitely, they're still young, but they know everything about my past. They've asked questions, for example, why my parents don't look like me, and things like that. So there are, even in their little minds, questions, and we've answered as many as we can, and we're as open as possible. We have books for their identities in general. We try to have books that have more Asian characters in them as well, so that they can see, that they can relate to these, these media.
Representation.
Representation in the books and stuff. So we do a lot of that. And then we celebrate different Asian holidays. And so, we'll go through all 3 of them, honestly. We'll do a little Chuseok is actually coming up soon. And so we'll do stuff for that, Solal for the Lunar New Year. And then we also do the Chinese New Year. We also do Children's Day.
Okay. Yeah. That's Japanese.
And so, we try to incorporate a little bit of everything so that they have that exposure. And I don't want them to forget who they are.
Of course, of course. I've been thinking lately about how mixed marriages and mixed kids are becoming more common. And, in a couple of generations, there's going to be fewer and fewer people that are just one race. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you've thought about that because you have kids that are mixed and a wife that is mixed too. I don't even know if that's the right word to say. Is that rude to say mixed? What do you say?
I say multiple ethnicities. Ethnicities. Yeah, I mean, they have, a little bit of everything. I feel like they're stronger because of that.
Of course, yeah.
I love that they can kind of relate to each one. And especially with foods and stuff, we make sure that they know which foods come from which countries. And so we introduce them to a lot of stuff.
And you're a bit of a foodie yourself, aren't you?
Yeah, I love food. I love to cook and I love to eat.
Nice. I love that about Janchi Show. You often end with trying some sort of Korean food. And I guess you're the one that knows about the Korean food. You've educated yourself as an adult, not from growing up with it or something. But the other guys, some of them are like, I've never had this before.
Yeah. I was privileged to have been in California for 20 years. And so during my time there, I definitely got exposed to a lot more ethnic foods than I had in Oklahoma.
For sure.
So I ran with it. But I researched recipes, I cook stuff. I'm happy that it's kind of opened my eyes to a lot of the culture through the recipes and just the history of the food.
Oh, definitely. And it's so great that you're sharing that with your children. It sounds like you're doing an awesome job as a parent and trying to help them with their own identity. I'm sure that that's no easy task when you had no connection to your own Asian identity as a kid. So I wonder if you're kind of living it through them, not in a bad way, but like you're watching your kids grow up fully Asian. And I wonder what that does to you inside.
Yeah, I love it. I love seeing the things that they lean towards. For example, my oldest son is in Taekwondo and he's been doing that for almost 3 years now. And, I didn't have a chance to do Taekwondo. I know I was in karate, I think, for a little bit when I was younger, but it was never really like explained to me why or what, or just like, oh, there's a martial art. Do you want to join it? And it was the only option. Now, having him in Taekwondo, which is a Korean martial art, I love seeing that. And I love seeing that they count in Korean, and I love seeing that they say things and they do a lot more than I ever did. And so
I got myself involved in a taiko group, which is the Japanese drumming. I bet they have that where you live.
They do. My wife did it, actually.
Did she?
She was in taiko groups back in college and in California. Yeah.
It's so fun. And I'm one of the few white people there. So I get to feel what it's like to feel like a minority, which is very good for me. And I love the ritual. We have to clean the studio every night and the bowing in and all the Japanese phrases that I've learned. And I had hoped my son would have done it with me, but then as soon as your old mother does it, it's no longer cool. Then he's like, no, Mom, that's your thing. Shoot, dang it. It's very sad, but maybe he will do it someday. It's really fun.
You go get him the Taiko video game that's out.
Yeah. We played that at an event lately. That was really fun. Yeah, that would be fun. That'd be fun. And it's so therapeutic. I love the drumming, and it's so just like, rah, you get all your energy out. It's so great to find those connections. That's wonderful. Well, I've enjoyed getting to know you, Nathan, and you're doing great work out in the world in so many different ways. Is there anything else you would like to mention that I have not mentioned yet, or that I haven't asked you about?
No, I just appreciate the work you're doing and helping to share my perspective and my voice. That's the number one thing why I do a podcast and why I'm part of CON, is because I want my voice to be heard to other adoptees, because it's best to hear from the adoptee voices and not from, no offense to your podcast or to you, but but from my perspective as my podcast, it's hearing from adoptees to adoptees and things like that.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure there's a lot of adoptees that listen to your podcast and adoptive parents that listen to your podcast. And that's, I think, also amazing and great. And I appreciate that you're opening the channels for that. So thank you again.
Yeah, of course. Whenever an adoptive parent asks me what they should do, my number one thing, I have two things. I say, go listen to adult adoptees. Just go listen to their podcast, read their memoirs, just listen. And then secondly, go work on ourselves. But I love elevating adoptee voices. I hope that people like my son can find those adoptee voices that match at least partly to what he's going through. And there are so many adoptee voices out there, and, from many different perspectives and stories and histories. And I'm grateful for all of you, and keep going, keep doing it, and keep doing the good work. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
If people wanted to get a hold of you, how would they best do that?
Sure. They can get a hold of me on my Instagram account, which is Nowack, and the last name is Nowack. They can find our podcast, which is Janchi Show, on all the Spotify, Google, Apple podcasts and things like that. And Khan is just Kaan. So for those who say, wait, the name of Khan is so much longer.
I know. That's so funny.
But yeah.
Everyone just calls it Khan though. So it's funny how language evolves like that. I'll put links to all of those things down below. And yeah, I love you guys' show, the Janchi Show. You guys are funny and you sometimes get into deep topics, but it's a lot of lightness and goofy guys talking. And it's wonderful.
Keep it mixed.
You mix it. You do. You do a great job of mixing it up. And you guys all are really talented. So thank you and good luck with all of that. Thank you so much. Well, listeners, after you check out the Janchi Show and Nathan's Instagram account, go find Unraveling Adoption at unravelingadoption.com. We have a lot of really exciting events coming up. So if you go to unravelingadoption.com/events, you'll find really wonderful opportunities to be in community with each other and learn and grow. On December 22nd, we have our next adoptee only medicine circle with Miyok Ikaro. And on January 11th, 2025, we have a film screening of Crystal Park, one of our previous podcast guests, her documentary, Because She's Adopted. That's on January 11th. And heads up, on February 8th, if you're anywhere near Southern California, we're having an in-person all-day event on February 8th in Seal Beach. Please find out all about all of our events at unravelingadoption.com/events. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Please share this episode, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Thank you all for your support. And Nathan and I want you all to stay safe.